Hi guys, this is Haley from Swap Shop, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this really cool technique. This technique is the watercolor and salt, and it makes a really cool background. So let me show you guys what supplies you'll be needing to make this technique so we can get on into the tutorial. You will be needing some salt. You can use any type of salt, obviously, because we're just using some table salt. You'll be needing some watercolor and a paintbrush. You'll also obviously be needing some water. I suggest using an old ice cube tray. These things work great for water. Cut ATC, and remember ATC is 2.5 by 3.5. You can use any construction paper for this ATC, but I'm going to be using some watercolor paper. This is optional, but for my ATC I'm going to be using a fine print and a paintbrush Sharpie and a pencil. Okay, so now that you know the supplies you'll be needing to do this technique, let's get on into the crafting. So I'm going to be coating my ATC in some water before we begin, because the more water you use, the more the salt is going to absorb and the more it's going to look cool and spotted. So after that's done, I'm going to pull out my watercolor. You want to make sure your watercolor is very wet before you pick it up for this technique. See how it's bleeding? That's what you want. It looks really cool that way. So now, once it's still wet, you want to grab your salt. I like to sprinkle it in my hands before I sprinkle it onto the card, so you don't get a bunch more than you want. And then you just want to sprinkle it onto the card lightly. And I'm just going to dump a whole bunch of salt on it. You can use little or more salt. It really just depends on how much watercolor you want to come off. Now once I have my salt on the card, I'm going to let it dry. Okay, so my watercolor is completely dry. So now you have a choice to leave the salt on to give it some texture, or like I'm going to do, take off the salt. So this is just pretty simple. All you have to do is just kind of rub against it. And there you go. There is my finished watercolor salt background. So like I said, this is really just a background, so you can put a quote over top of it or a silhouette. I decided to put a spider with a spider web as a silhouette over top